This afternoon, I'm going to talk about Joseph. Okay. Now, you see this beautiful picture. Okay, it's created by AI. Okay, software called Midjourney. Unfortunately, it's not created by me, but that's good. But it's created by AI, and the basic instruction for the AI is create the brothers of Joseph in Egypt taking a selfie. Yeah, you get the joke, isn't it? The brothers of Joseph taking a selfie in Egypt. And this is what the AI come up with. I thought it was very interesting that the AI can know who Joseph is, know the Egypt, and to position and design this interesting picture. And maybe that's how Joseph's brother looks like. Okay. Now, if you want to see who's the timeline of Joseph is, because sometimes Old Testament can be quite blurred. Okay. So Abraham, we heard about Abraham as Lydia read in Romans 4. Abraham's son is Isaac. And Isaac's son is Jacob and Esau. Okay, and Jacob has 12 sons. No, he's very fertile. A lot of wives. And Joseph is one of his sons. So we're going to consider the life of Joseph. What lessons can we learn from Joseph? But first, to set in context, Joseph, at that time, the superpower is Egypt. Okay, we don't hear much about Egypt as a superpower, but Egypt has more than 1,000 years of civilization. Okay, even before the Romans, okay, before the Greeks. But we don't hear much about Egyptian civilization. We hear more about Greek and the Romans. But Egypt is a blessed land in a sense that they have the river Nile, which is a major river. And every year, the Nile floods, overflows its bank. So that the coastal area, okay, you see the green patches and all that, the coastal area of the Nile become flooded and filled with silt, which is very fertile for growing. So Egypt became the breadbasket of the ancient world, meaning that a lot of wheat and grains are grown there, okay, and it became very powerful, very rich, because they have more grain that they can utilize, so they sold it all over the Mediterranean, the known world at the time. And the result of that, they become very rich and they become very powerful. So Egypt was the superpower at that time. A bit like Ukraine. Okay? Ukraine at one time in the past, because of its soil, was also the breadbasket of Europe. That's why you find that a lot of wars have been fought over Ukraine, even before now. Okay? But that's another story. But we go back to Egypt now. So Egypt is the center power. You can see that the light green goes all the way to Syria. So the land of Canaan, where Abraham and Isaac and Jacob all staying, are under the influence of Egypt. So anything they do, they will look towards Egypt. So with that as a background, we look at the life lessons that we can learn from the life of Joseph. Now this evening, I want to share 3 lessons. One is the road to maturity. How do we become mature in the faith, in our personal and emotional being? The second are the tests of maturity. And the third are the acts of trust and dependability in our life. And it's all the way, we're going back all the way to Genesis 37 to 50. Okay, we're going to cover a lot. So the first is the road to maturity. Okay, we start, and one thing about the life of Joseph is that Genesis actually gave us the date. No, most of the Bible, they don't tell you exactly when that happened. Okay, but Genesis gave us the exact age of Joseph, so we can know which part of his life is. And we know that for the first 17 years of his life, he is a rather spoiled kid. Jacob is very fruitful, isn't it? He got 12 wives, he got many wives, and he got 12 sons. Okay, but he's not a good father. That's why if I'm to preach next week at Father's Day, I will not choose Jacob. Okay, he is a lousy father actually, because he shows favoritism. Okay, of all his 12 kids, he don't like Reborn, he don't like Judah, he likes Benjamin, and he likes Joseph, because these two are from his favorite wife. You see, bias a bit. So Joseph is his spoiled child, his favorite child. So you can see that while his brothers are out in the field looking after the sheep, Joseph is back at home, hanging around. That's why when you read Genesis, you find that Joseph, he didn't actually go out. Only when the father tells him, go and tell your brothers that. And not only then, he tells tales. The Bible actually says that. He carried tales of his brother to the father. Brother Judah, he did this, Okay, so Judah gets scolded. So not very, not a very impressive young man. Okay, and he's entitled, he's boastful because of his dreams. Okay, now there is a wonderful musical. Okay, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dream Code. Okay, have you seen this musical? Okay, this is a very old musical, but they made it into a movie. Okay, which is one of my favorite movie, and actually it's on the YouTube now, so you can actually download it. Okay, and it's a musical, and it tells the whole story of Joseph, and the star is Donny Osmond. Okay, so if you know who Donny Osmond is, I see all the blank face, so you all don't know who Donny Osmond is. So you know how old I am when Donny Osmond is a star. Okay, but it's a good one to watch because it is beautiful songs, very upbeat, but it tells the story of Joseph. Especially it tells about dreams. Now, Joseph is one of the rare people who have the gift of dream interpretation. Okay, all of us dream. Okay, everybody dreams. It's just that we remember our dreams or not. Okay, some studies says that we dream 5 to 50 times per night. And the most dreams we have is before we wake up. But praise the Lord, we don't remember most of our dreams. Okay, otherwise you go crazy. But some people are given the gift of interpretation of dreams. So they can interpret dreams. And Joseph is one of these people. But his dreams are actually quite interesting because he dreams that there are 12 sheaves of wheat, but the 11 of them surround his sheaf and then they bow towards him. So, yeah, it serves that his brothers, and understood as his brothers all bowing towards him. Okay, you get a dream like that, what do you do? Okay, you get a dream like that you are the one and the whole church will bow towards you. Well, my advice to you is keep quiet. Okay, you don't want the rest of the church coming after you. But Joseph go and tell the brother, hey, you know what I dream or not? There were 12 sheep, and my sheep was standing in the center, and you all bow towards me. And then he got another dream, where similarly, the stars, there were 11 stars, and his star, and the sun and the moon all bow towards him. Actually, I suspect it's one dream broke into two. And he said that, the sun and the moon is daddy and mommy, They also bow towards me. So he go and tell everybody. So the father says, keep quiet. So that shows the character of Joseph. That in the first 17 years, you can see that, as I said, Genesis is very clear. Until 17 years old, he was at home, he was entitled, he was spoiled. So much so that his brother hated him so much that when the opportunity came, initially they wanted to kill him. Okay? They want to throw him down a cistern and let him starve to death. Okay? And then pretend that he was killed by an animal. Okay. But they changed their mind when the Midianites came along and he sold Joseph off as a slave. Can you imagine how terrible, how much hatred the brother has for him, that they're willing to sell one of their brothers off to the Midianites as a slave. And we know that Joseph was a slave from 17 to 30. But then, after that, he was Pharaoh's right hand for the next 80 years. So we are talking about 13 years as a slave. Okay. So you find that the first half of his life is the good times and the bad times. And we look at his life, Joseph's life, you find that the first 17 years he's a favorite son. And then he was sold as a slave. And being as a slave at that time is no joke, no fun. Because your master owns you. Okay, you have no rights, no weekend off, no access to handphone, no internet access. So it's a life of suffering. Okay. Then he was actually given a chance to become he was actually sold to Potiphar, which is a captain of the guard in Egypt. Okay. So he was made the manager of the household. But then he was falsely accused. Then he served another few years in imprisonment in the very house that he served, in the prison. But because he was so good, he was given a chance as a prison manager. So he came out for a while, and then he was sent down to prison again. So you see that his life is all not bed of roses. Okay? There are thorns. And these are the periods where he learned much about God. And he learned much about himself. Okay? So we have to realize that in the journey to maturity, there are good times and bad times. And how we make of the bad times is how we rose to maturity. And also, how do we live when we are given an opportunity? Okay, like Joseph and Potiphar. Okay, Potiphar is his master. Joseph was so good that he was made the manager of the house. But when Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, he actually resisted. But the wife accused him of trying to molest her. And Potiphar has to send him back to prison. again as a prison manager, because he was so good that the prison warden says, okay, Joseph, you take over, I go home, anything, don't call me. So he was also a prison manager. Okay, so that is when the test of integrity comes in. That when we have opportunity to take responsibility, that will show us who we are. This is Ravi Zacharias. Okay, I'm sure some of you still remember him. Okay, he built a fantastic ministry of apologetics. Apologetics is a defense on the faith. So much so that he is acknowledged to be the #1 apologist in the world. Okay, similar to what Billy Graham to evangelism, Ravi Zacharias was to apologetics. And he wrote many books, and he debated many people. So he's the best. Unfortunately, there are events in his life which led to a public scandal, a sexual scandal. And because of that, all the bookshops have withdrawn all his books, and his ministry closed down. And all the good work that he spent his whole life building are no longer available. It's sad, because I have read many of his work, and they are good. Okay, I'm not excusing for his sexual behavior, but his work is good, and I do know him. Okay. So Proverbs has always been something for me to warn myself. Proverbs 4. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. Okay. And you see, this is a beach of very nice, smooth stones. Okay. And I've been to this beach. The stones are nice and smooth. Okay. It's by generations and millennia of water rising over it. But where these stones stand, they used to stand a mountain. So the warning to me is that we have to be careful. Okay? The world will assault us in any and every way. We are in the midst of a spiritual warfare. And if we're not careful, we will end up with nice round stones. We'll get torn down. So, the integrity, the test of integrity in Joseph is what we found in Genesis 40. Okay, he was thrown into prison. That one day, the Pharaoh's a chief cupbearer and his chief baker was sent into prison. Okay, and each of them had a dream. So they asked Joseph to interpret the dream. Okay, so you can see that the cupbearer says, I dreamt there was a wine, they have 3 stems, and they have fruits, and I squeeze the fruit, and it goes into the cup, and the Pharaoh drinks it. So Joseph, what do you think it means? Joseph says, okay, the 3 branches are the 3 days. In 3 days, the Pharaoh will call you and he will be reinstated. So the baker says, is it the same for me? No, I dreamt that I have 3 baskets full of bread, but they were all the birds trying to pick the bread. And Joseph says, I don't think it's the same for you, because the 3 baskets means 3 days. In 3 days you will be hanged. Which came true. So Joseph's reputation precedes him. And what he did for the cupbearer, because cupbearer is still alive, the baker was hanged. came to the notice of the Pharaoh, because Pharaoh had a bad dream. So the Pharaoh asked, and the cupbearer says, there's this guy in prison called Joseph, and he can interpret dreams. So Pharaoh has a bad dream. He dreamt that he was standing on the side of the Nile, and from the Nile came 7 fat cows, and then followed by 7 skinny cows, which add up all the fat cows. Okay, I didn't know the cows are carnivorous, but that's what happened in Pharaoh's dream. Then he says that there were 7 heads of wheat that is growing well, followed by 7 dead weeds. So what is the answer to the dream? Okay, the Pharaoh says to Joseph, I have this dream, no one can interpret it. So can you interpret it? Okay. And Joseph says, it's not in me, but God gave Pharaoh a favoured answer. Okay, so notice that Joseph is beginning to use God as the one who interprets dreams, not that he is the one who interprets dreams. So you look at earlier in Genesis, when he was 17 years old and he was telling his brothers, he says, this is how I interpret dreams. But now you see that as he grows older, as he goes through imprisonment, he begins to realize that it's not he who interprets dreams, but God who interprets dreams. And the third point is that because he told the Pharaoh, what you dreamt is Egypt will undergo 7 years of fruitfulness. You have so much grain, followed by 7 years of famine. So you need somebody to build cities with silos to keep all the extra grain to last you through the 7 years of famine. Okay. And Pharaoh says, okay, since you are the smart guy, I'll put you in charge. Okay, so he took off his signet ring and put on Joseph, and Joseph becomes in charge. So he has acts of trust and dependability. Okay, so from integrity to acts of trust and in our daily life. And if you look at our life, okay, are we trustworthy? Can people trust us? Are we dependable on our daily life? In our daily life, okay, we don't have to be a politician. We don't have to be a what, but all of us, where we are now, every day, as we deal with people, and sometimes we deal with people online, not face to face. Are we trustworthy? Are we dependable in our daily life? And that's the lesson that we need to learn. That Joseph is. Stephen Covey, a very well-known writer, he's also a very committed Mormon. He says that the ability to establish, grow, extend, and restore trust is the key professional and personal competency of our time. Okay. Trust. Trust is something that we don't have nowadays. Okay. None of us trust our WhatsApp messages. None of us trust what social media is telling us. None of us trust the newspaper. And none of us trust our government. Because trust is such a value commodity. But because Joseph has won the trust of Pharaoh, he was able to take care of Egypt during the time of fruitfulness and famine. Okay. Sometimes the challenge to us comes not because when we are famine, during the time of famine, but when we are successful. The greatest challenge in us sometimes is times when we are successful, not times when we are unsuccessful, not during the times of failure. So, if you're able to handle both success and failure, and you see later on in Genesis 45, he forgives his brother and he brings his family over. So, these are the different lessons. And as we look at Joseph's life, okay, we see there's a journey of hope. He started with a self-centered person. But you find that as he grows, go through the various things, he begins to be more conscious of God in his life. He begins to have more hope. I always wondered how we would have felt like during his first imprisonment, when the first night he arrived in Egypt as a slave. How would you feel if you know that your own brothers have betrayed you? How would you feel if you know that your brothers sold you for 20 pieces of silver? All the anger and hatred and all that. Will you ever forgive them? Okay. And yet, for 13 years, Joseph lived with this. And I think in this time, I'm sure he has thought of suicide. Because he can become so depressed as a slave in prison. There's no hope at all for him, except a miracle. He's not going to survive. Yet you find that he did survive. And he came out with greater faith and greater hope. And we begin to slowly see that this hope is not just hope in that things will get better, which many of us have this hope, but the hope is in God. Okay? The hope is in God. And that is something that we must learn. There is something that we must learn as we weather the storm. You can see in Genesis 41, okay, on the lower section, when the Pharaoh says to Joseph, I have a dream, and Joseph says, it's not in me, but God will give Pharaoh a favoured dream. So there's an indication that his hope is in God, and he believes that God will give him the interpretation dream. And that the most powerful statement he can make was in Genesis 50, verse 20. When he confronted his brothers, and his brothers are so scared because now Joseph is the wiser or the chief minister or the president of the Egypt. And he says to the brother, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. So Joseph finally revealed that his understanding that God is in charge, that his hope is in God. And I think that as we face a storm in our life, and all of us will face storm in our life, okay? There's no exemption because life is messy. Okay. What is our hope? Do we have hope? And if we have hope, what is our hope? It's not based on any fuzzy things, Our hope is based on the person of Christ. Okay. That God become man. So he fully understands our needs. And that this Jesus is both man and God and has ascended up to heaven now. And even now, see at the right hand of God to intercede for us. That is our hope. That the Father will accept us back. That no matter how bad the situation it is, no matter what storms we face, we have the hope. And the hope is God. And that is what Joseph learned. And that is what I hope we carry home tonight, this evening. Why is Joseph so significant? Okay. We know that Joseph is there, but without Joseph, there will be no Exodus. Okay. We are going to start the book of Exodus now. Do you realize that without Joseph, there will be no Exodus? If Joseph wasn't sold as a slave to Egypt, the Jacob family would have died of starvation in Canaan. But because Joseph was sold as a slave, he became the chief minister or the leader in Egypt. He's able to invite his whole family to stay at Goshen in Egypt. And because they were there, they survived the famine. No doubt, about 500 years later, they become slaves of the Egyptians. But they survived. And it's this group of people in Egypt that came out of Egypt in the Exodus, that crossed the Red Sea. Okay, so without Joseph, no Exodus, no the Hebrews people. And if there is no Exodus, there will be no covenant. That means Abraham's offspring and all that would have died at the time of Joseph. And without the covenant, there will be no church. We will not be here, and our faith will be in vain. So you see the power of one life. Okay. One life can mean so much, even though things may seem bad at the time. And I believe that each one of our life is a Joseph in the making. That our life means something. That our life will fit into the master plan of God. That without us, there will be a gap in the final master plan. So we are all Joseph. So learn to have hope and to have hope in God. Shall we pray? Father, we just want to thank you again for being our hope, for being our God. That no matter how bleak the situation we are in, or how good the situation we are in, that you are our hope and our God. Help us, Lord, to look towards you, because you are our vision, our hope. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.